Solon. Remember, we described the democracy of Solon, in which, while the people were the ultimate sovereign, while the ordinary citizens sat on juries and elected magistrates, a specific amount of wealth was necessary to hold a magistracy. And there was a supreme court in the form of the Areopagus, meeting on the hill of Mars, composed of ex-magistrates serving for life, that could call a law passed by the people unconstitutional. In 462, 461, Pericles led a movement to abolish this law power of the Areopagus. No longer could the Areopagus declare a law unconstitutional, and the will of the people was absolute sovereign, nor was there an appeal from a judgment of the court of the people. And what is more, all offices, with very few exceptions, were filled by lottery. The ultimate statement of faith in the ordinary citizen, that any Athenian can hold any public office. Almost all the offices were held for only 1 year, and they were filled by committees, generally 10 Athenian citizens, to involve as many people as possible in the work of government. It was truly government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And Pericles was but the embodiment of that democratic will. It was also an imperial democracy. And Pericles is like Winston Churchill in believing that the Athenian Empire, like the British Empire for Churchill, was a great force for good. The subjects of Athens should be proud, he said, to serve an empire like ours. They should be proud to pay us tribute. We protect them, and we give them glory that is reflected from us. But to achieve this vision, Pericles believed that ultimately Athens must defeat Sparta. There cannot be two number ones. And his whole political career since 462 had been devoted towards building up the strength of Athens and challenging Sparta. Other Athenian politicians had believed that Athens could rule the sea, Sparta could rule the land. He had driven them into exile, had them ostracized. And now, by 431, he was about to achieve his goal. One of the ephors, Sthenelaidas, simply spoke and said, recalling old-fashioned virtues, an ally of the Spartans, Corinth, has been wronged. Vote as befits the honor of Sparta. Vote for war. And so the Spartans began to clap their shields with their spears, over and over again, shouting, war, war, war. And then, since Athenian ambassadors were watching this scene, the ephor told the Spartans those who favored war should move to the right, and those who wanted peace to the left. And almost as one man, the Spartans moved to the right, and then called an assembly of their allies, who also voted for war. And so, war had been declared. But the Spartans did their very best to prevent actual armed conflict. They did not want this war. And King Archidamus used every possible means to bring about a negotiated peace. Time and again, ambassadors were sent to Athens to make new offers, until finally, on our spring day, the ambassadors arrived with a very simple request to the Athenians. We will not go to war with you if you remove the pollution. The pollution. It was an ancient curse put upon the family of Pericles. Generations before, they had been responsible for the judicial murder of a man who had sought refuge at the temple of the gods. That was the pollution. Should have been long forgotten, but the Spartans brought it back up. In other words, remove Pericles. We know that he is the sole cause driving this demand for war. Remove him. And this served only to increase the... You will be weak in the eyes of others. And that is the great mistake for a power, to be weak. Maybe we should not have begun upon this path of imperial power. But we have done so, and we cannot let it go now. It is a war for our survival, but we can win. And here we have Pericles as the statesman. His vision, his drive to bring Athens into a war, but presenting them with a strategy that will achieve victory. For this will be a war fought by sea. And the Spartans cannot adapt themselves. They cannot become the sailors that we are. And to have a fleet, you must have money. And then he laid out specifically for them their financial resources. We have every year in tribute from our empire 600 talents. We have in reserve 6,000 talents. Let us set up an iron reserve of 1,000 talents that we will not touch except in the most dire straits. We have 13,000 first-line hoplites, 16,000 reserve hoplites. With these men, with these ships, with this money, we cannot lose unless we make mistakes. And we will fight a war that makes it most unlikely that we shall be the ones to make the mistakes. We will use our fleet. We will avoid major land battles. Stay true to this course. Stay true to the greatness of Athens. And so he called his people forward to this supreme vision. And then, having refused the Spartans' request for negotiations, the Spartan army then advanced towards the borders of Attica. As they arrived at the frontier of Attica, the Spartan king, Archidamus, tried one more time to bring peace. And when he sent his ambassador, and the ambassador Melesippus arrived in the city of Athens, Pericles had the Athenians call an assembly and convinced them not even to receive the ambassador. So determined was he to have this war. And so as the ambassador, left under armed guard, reached the frontiers where the Spartan army was waiting, he turned and said, Idi imara toi selesi ton megalon kakon artse. Today will be the beginning of great evils for all the Greeks. And the Spartan army then invaded. And yet, there's another side to Pericles in antiquity. He had his critics too. And among those ostraca that we find, those pieces of broken pottery, there are quite a few inscribed Pericles, the son of Xanthippus. And there was a strong alternate opinion that the war which he had begun was done not out of the highest of patriotic motives, but instead to hide his own political problems. Ideas that his friends had been engaged in embezzlement. Ideas that he sought to divert the Athenian people from his personal affairs by plunging them into this disastrous war. It's an opinion that I had long rejected, given very little attention to it. But somehow events over the last few years have convinced me that it's possible that the leader of a great and democratic nation might plunge his nation into at least armed conflict in an effort to divert it.